Hello, welcome to today's live. What's the subject for today? Well, I've done several videos on U visas, but I'm going to concentrate on this one on derivative U visas. Okay, what does that mean? Basically, when different family members can get the U visa, even though they were not the victim or victims of crime. Okay, so derivative U visas, that's the subject. And then what I'll do is I will go back through all the people that joined. I will see if you have any questions for me, immigration questions, and by that I mean U.S. immigration questions. And then from there, uh, we'll call it a day because I'll have to go and do my normal consults per the morning. Okay, so let's talk about derivative U visas. So first of all, a U visa is when someone is a victim of a specific crime. I mean, it's not any crime, okay? And I've got a lot of videos on distinguishing what types of crime. But let's assume, for argument's sake, that the principal applicant qualifies for a U visa. Let's just assume that, okay? So then the question becomes, what family members of the applicant can apply as a derivative and get the same visa? That's what happens. If they qualify as a derivative, they will get exactly the same visa as the main applicant, and they will also be able to apply for the green card when it comes, which would be 3 years after issuance of the U visa, so they can obtain status as well. So first we need to break down, when someone applies as a derivative, how old are they? Okay, so if they're single and under 21 years old, then there is a different set of derivatives that will qualify than if they are over 21. Okay, so let's just start with the first one, younger and under 21. Okay, derivatives would be parents. Okay, it would be siblings under 18. And if they have children, it would be children. Okay, if they're over 21, then it would be spouses and or children. Okay, and the derivatives can apply at the same time that the main applicant applies for their U visa, or they can apply after. Okay, I mean, they could wait years and apply then if if that's what they want. They can also apply through consulate processing. So if you happen to have a family member who would qualify for a derivative U visa and they don't happen to be sitting here in the US, that is not a bar to them being able to get the derivative U visa. Okay? They would be able to still apply for it. It's a tad little bit more complicated if they're outside the US, but it can still be done and they can still ultimately enter as a derivative when coming in. Okay? So when you file the derivative benefits of a U visa, you have to first prove the relationship. Okay? Obviously, if you're a spouse, you need to prove you're legally married. If you're the parent, you need to prove it's a parent-child relationship. Okay? And you need to have the birth certificates and all that stuff. So I know what one of you are asking. They're going, what happens if you're under 21 and single at the time you apply, but by the time everything's approved, you're over 21? Okay, and normally if you're over 21, for example, you can't have a sibling that would be able to apply for you or qualify as a derivative. So here's the answer. It is determined when you actually file for the application. So there isn't an age out of the U visas. It's only when you apply. So if you're 20 years, 11 months, and 15 days, and you qualify as a derivative, and you apply for the derivative visa, then that means that the derivation will qualify even after you're 21, even if the primary U doesn't get that visa for another 10 years. Okay, so it's a nice feature. The way they look at it is, you've suffered, the U applicant has suffered enough anyways, and they don't want to make them suffer more by not being able to be with their family, of at least whom they state qualifies as a derivative, so that they can be together. Okay, so that's the bottom line with derivative U's. Let's see if we have any. See if we have any questions. If we do have any questions, now's the time to ask. Okay, let's see here. Just a minute. Let me just scroll through. See what we have. Oh, and I have a note here. It says, encourage your viewers to give you roses. Okay, so we'll see about that. All right, let me see. Okay, here's from Moral. I applied for I-485 asylum base since February 2024, and I'm still waiting for a decision. Is that normal? Okay, first of all, Moral, I need to confirm that you actually won asylum. Okay, I'm assuming based on this question that you did win asylum and that a whole year has passed prior to you filing the I-485. If that's not the case, then you didn't file it properly or timely. Okay, but if that is the case, and you filed the adjustment in February 2024, which would have been, let's see, February 2025. It's a little bit long. I mean, I'm assuming you have the receipt notice. Okay, if you don't have the receipt notice, that's not good. Now, if you have the receipt notice, but you don't have any other indication that they've moved, then after a sufficient amount of time, you can do a formal inquiry, which you should have an attorney do. And then if that provides nothing, you can do the writ of mandamus. Okay, that will force them to make a decision. And I would only do the writ of mandamus if you have a really approvable case. If it's just on the line for some reason, or you're inadmissible for some reason, and you didn't file a waiver, or you didn't do it properly or timely, then that's not the case. Okay, if you didn't file it timely, when you filed it, even though now it might be timely, they're going to reject it and you're going to have to refile. Okay? Let's see what else we have. Nimbaro got the #1 gifter badge. Just a minute. Which, speaking of Nimbaro, here's your question. I have a question. If I am going for a citizenship interview, can a dismissed not guilty create a problem? Absolutely. Okay. First of all, if you're in an interview and you admit to the elements of the crime, even though you don't have a conviction, for immigration purposes, it's like you have the conviction. Secondly, I'm assuming you probably put that in the application itself, because if you didn't, they're going to say you committed misrepresentation and fraud. Thirdly, if you pled not guilty, what happened that got the case dismissed? Okay, are you sure it's dismissed? Did they just have insufficient evidence? The only reason I ask this is because it's a little odd to get to the point where you actually plead not guilty and then have it dismissed. Okay, usually it'll go to trial or, some other manner. So I would need to make certain that, in fact, that's what you pled. And secondly, that it was actually dismissed. Okay. From Deep Mala. Hello, good morning. How can I get my spousal work permit? Well, that depends. There's lots of different ways of getting work permits. Are you a U.S. citizen? Did you petition your spouse? Does your spouse qualify for adjustment? What is the status of your spouse right now? Is your spouse in the U.S.? Are you here on, for example, an H-1B? Okay, that means your spouse can apply for an H-4. What country is your spouse from so I can see what visas they qualify for? So there's a lot of questions as to what your spouse might qualify for, as to regarding, what kind of work permit they may get. So I need more info. Okay, let's see. Oh, well, this is further from Deep Mala. You say you got your 4-year bona fide determination, which means you must have applied for a U visa. And you're asking how can your spouse get a work permit? Well, if you can get a work permit based on your U, then the spouse can get a work permit based on a derivative U. Okay? Let's see. Okay, and Nimbaro, this is the case where you say that you pled not guilty and the case was dismissed. Okay, that's not the proper word, because if it went to trial and you won, then it wasn't really dismissed. Okay, dismissed is when there's insufficient evidence and before it ever gets to trial it's dismissed. Okay, but if it did go to trial and you won and there's no conviction, then that's good, but it has to be presented properly to the officer. Michael, I'm a legal resident for over 30 years, been married for almost 15 years. Am I okay? Meaning, will Trump and his army of goons come after you and try to deport you? They might. What I would suggest is if you qualify for U.S. citizenship, you ought to apply for U.S. citizenship, okay? That's the best way to protect you. Why did the screen just get all dark? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Why haven't you applied for U.S. citizenship other than the fact that maybe you didn't want to do it? If there's no objection to doing it, you ought to apply for U.S. citizenship. Okay? It's a lot harder to try to deport someone or to detain someone if they're a U.S. citizen. Okay? Alrighty. Let's see. Okay, well, moral, again, third part of this question, you completed the 1 year after asylum approval, October 24, and you filed February 24, so you meet that. But again, I don't know if you did it properly. I don't know if you're still inadmissible. You can win asylum and still be inadmissible for various reasons, but you still might need a waiver. Okay? So, there you go. All right. Michael, you say you didn't realize? Well, give my office a call. I'll let you know what it takes to become a U.S. citizen. Because as it stands right now, today's day and age, if you can, you should. Period. Okay, that's all she wrote. All right? Well, that's all for today. That's all the questions. So everybody have a good day. Enjoy the rest of your day. And until the next live.